Welcome to Kiki's Talk Buffet. Let's talk it out.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into the really surprising start of a cultural icon. It was actually sparked by one of you asking about where creative ideas, truly come from.
Yeah, and we've got some fascinating material here. It's this account detailing the early struggles of a young artist really trying to make his way.
It gives such a vivid picture, doesn't it? This penniless painter dreaming big in Kansas City.
Absolutely. You really feel his ambition hitting, well, the hard reality of trying to break into the art world back then.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to explore how these seemingly insignificant experiences, like encountering a little creature in a rundown old garage, can somehow light the fuse for something completely groundbreaking.
It's amazing how that happens.
Okay, so let's set the scene. This young painter, he arrives in Kansas City full of ideals. He wants to work for a newspaper, thinking that's the place, for an artistic environment.
Right. He's not just looking for a paycheck. He's searching for that community, that sort of fertile ground for his creativity to grow. It's that very human need for connection, isn't it? Especially in creative fields.
But, well, it doesn't quite work out like that straight away. He takes his portfolio to an editor, feeling hopeful, I imagine,
Probably quite nervous too.
and gets turned down flat. The editor basically says his work isn't original enough. Ouch.
Yeah, that's a tough blow. That first big rejection.
It's gotta sting. What does that kind of feedback usually do to a young artist? Does it make them determined or just plant seeds of doubt?
Oh, it can go either way, definitely. For some, it's like fuel on the fire. It makes them double down, prove them wrong.
Right.
But for others, yeah, it can really shake their confidence. It makes them question everything, their talent, their path. It's a vulnerable spot where that inner belief meets, well, harsh external judgment.
So despite that initial failure, he does find some work. Not the newspaper job, though. He ends up doing some painting for a church.
Okay, so keeping the artistic dream alive, sort of.
Sort of, yeah, but the pay is described as very, very low. It makes you think about the day-to-day grind, doesn't it? Artists trying to survive while chasing their passion. What kind of choices do they face?
Well, it's often that constant juggle, you know.
Wow.
You need to pay the rent, buy food. So you might take on work that doesn't really feed your soul, creatively speaking.
Right.
And that creates tension, that pull between artistic fulfillment and just, well, financial necessity. It's a story as old as art itself, really.
And talking about tough circumstances, his workspace is less than ideal. He can't afford a proper studio.
So where does he end up?
A derelict garage. That's his temporary office. Just picture it.
Whoa. A garage, so like cold, drafty.
And the smell. The text mentions the smell of gasoline, probably oil too, mixed with paint fumes.
Urgh. Yeah, that paints a picture on it. Talk about resourcefulness, though. Making do with what you have. This abandoned, smelly space becomes his haven.
It's such a stark contrast, isn't it? The high-minded artistic goals and the, well, pretty grim reality of where the work's actually happening.
Sometimes those kind of rough environments can, paradoxically, create a unique kind of focus, though. Fewer distractions, maybe.
Maybe. It's definitely not the inspiring loft studio you might imagine. And he's working late nights in this place.
Pushing himself hard.
Yeah, and just when he's probably exhausted, trying to focus, or maybe even sleep, he starts hearing mice, scurrying sounds.
Oh, lovely. Just what you need.
Not exactly peaceful, but the account says he tolerates them, just puts up with the noise.
Is that just sheer exhaustion, do you think? Or maybe resignation to his situation?
Could be. But you wonder, like you hinted, maybe something else is going on. Could being that close to nature, even if it's mice in a garage, be subtly changing him?
It's an interesting thought. Because instead of setting traps or trying to chase them out,
He just lives alongside them. The text even says this odd coexistence brought a kind of life to the otherwise dead space.
that's a really fascinating detail. It suggests a sort of softening, maybe?
Yeah.
An acceptance of his surroundings, flaws and all. Tolerating creatures most people see as pests. It could point to a developing sensitivity, maybe breaking down some of those rigid ideas about himself and the world. Artists often have that, don't they?
And this leads to a real turning point. One night, he's tired, working late, dim light, and he sees a pair of bright eyes looking back at him. A little mouse.
The encounter.
Right. And the text makes a point of saying that maybe in the past his reaction would have been different. Maybe he'd have tried to kill it.
But not now.
Eh.
So what's changed? The text asks that question, doesn't it? Is a dead mouse more interesting than a living one?
Exactly. It's not just tolerance anymore. It's like a flicker of curiosity, seeing value in this tiny living thing.
A shift from nuisance to, well,
Yeah.
something worth watching, perhaps.
And the text links this directly to his struggles. It says, hardship has instilled in him a sense of empathy characteristic of great artists. It's like the tough times are actually sharpening his ability to connect, to feel.
Precisely. That idea that adversity can strip away the superficial stuff, make us more tuned in to the basics of life, including the lives of other creatures.
So he just watches it for a moment, this fleeting interaction, and then it scurries off.
But it doesn't end there, does it?
No, not at all. This mouse becomes a regular. It keeps coming back again and again, not just late at night either.
So it's getting bolder. Why do you think that is? Just the mouse's nature or something about the painter's attitude?
Maybe a bit of both. The text says he never harms it, never even scares it.
So the mouse probably senses there's no threat. And the painter, he's not actively encouraging it at first, but
Yeah.
he's not discouraging it either. It's like this silent agreement, sharing the space.
And then the mouse starts putting on a show. It's described as moving around the floor, doing these little acrobatics.
Acrobatics, really? Like what?
It doesn't specify exactly, but you can picture it, right? Little hops and scurries. And our painter, alone in his garage, becomes its audience.
That's quite an image. A solitary artist and his performing mouse.
And he even starts giving it breadcrumbs.
Ah, okay. Now that is significant. That's moving beyond just putting up with it.
Yeah, it's active engagement, isn't it?
Definitely. It's a small kindness, choosing to interact, maybe finding a little bit of, companionship, or just simple amusement during those long, lonely hours.
And this leads to trust building up,
Yeah.
slowly. The mouse, which kept its distance at first, starts getting closer.
Sensing it's safe.
Totally. Until eventually it gets so comfortable it actually climbs onto his drawing board.
Wow. Right onto his workspace.
Yeah, and apparently starts jumping around rhythmically on the board itself.
Okay, that would be distracting. I mean, you're trying to work.
Right, but he doesn't chase it off. The text says he just quietly enjoys its presence. Accepts it.
Why do you think he does that? Just lets it happen.
Maybe by then it was a familiar comfort, a welcome break from the stress. Perhaps he even saw something interesting, some charm in its little movements on his board.
It definitely suggests an openness to the unexpected, doesn't it? A willingness to find, well, maybe even joy in really unusual circumstances.
But this Kansas City phase, this garage phase, it comes to an end. He gets a chance to go to Hollywood.
Ah, the big break.
Seems like it. An opportunity to work on an animal-based cartoon.
Sounds perfect, right?
Tailor-made for him after his garage companion.
Yeah, that sounds like finally achieving those dreams he started out with. But imagine the pressure after all the setbacks.
Huge pressure, I bet. You failed before, struggled so much. Now here's this big chance. The stakes must feel incredibly high.
That hope mixed with the fear of failing again. It's intense.
And unfortunately, that Hollywood dream, it doesn't quite work out immediately.
Oh no, not again.
He fails again. The text says he ends up penniless, unemployed. Back to square one, essentially.
Wow, that must have been absolutely crushing, a second major failure like that
Yeah.
after getting so close.
What does that do to someone emotionally, do you think?
Oh, that can be really demoralizing. It can trigger deep self-doubt,
Mm-hmm.
Making you question not just your skills, but your whole life choice.
Yeah.
That initial resilience you had might be worn pretty thin by then. It's harder to bounce back. Honestly, that's a point where a lot of people might just give up.
So there he is, despair again, sleepless nights, the text says, wondering about his talent, his future, a really low point.
Utterly bleak.
But it's right there, in that darkness, that something clicks. One night, he suddenly remembers.
Don't tell me. The mouse.
The mouse back on his drawing board in that Kansas City garage.
Amazing. Why that memory, do you think? Why then?
It's powerful, isn't it? How our minds store things away and then pop. They surface when we least expect it, but maybe when we need it most.
Yeah, in that moment of creative block, complete despair,
Yeah.
his mind goes back to a time of struggle, sure, but also that unexpected connection.
Right.
It suggests that even our toughest times, those past experiences, they hold keys, don't they? They can unlock future breakthroughs.
And it wasn't just a passing thought. It was like, bam, inspiration. The text really stresses how sudden and brilliant the idea felt, like a switch flipped.
The classic aha moment.
Yeah.
But what made that memory the catalyst?
Maybe the simplicity, that pure, unpressured connection he had with the mouse, away from the professional world's demands.
Could be. Maybe it represented something authentic, something real he'd lost sight of.
And he acts on it immediately, no hesitation. Gets up, switches on the light, grabs his easel,
And starts sketching.
starts sketching.
A mouse. And that sketch, born from that memory, from that moment of despair.
Becomes Mickey Mouse, one of the most iconic cartoon characters ever.
It's incredible. And the text highlights how ordinary the birth was, doesn't it?
Haha.
The greatest animal cartoon image, born so ordinarily, underscores that huge ideas can really bubble up from anywhere.
And there's that great line, inspiration only favors those who think. It wasn't just luck. His mind was still working, searching, even in despair.
That's key. What kind of thinking is that, though? It's probably that mix of conscious effort and subconscious processing, right?
All his training, his experiences, good and bad, even watching that mouse.
It was all percolating under the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking here probably means being receptive, being open to seeing those connections, seeing the familiar in a totally new way.
And this young painter, the guy with the garage mouse, of course, it's Walt Disney.
A name that became absolutely monumental in American culture and beyond.
And this whole story, Mickey's origin, it's just such a powerful example of overcoming adversity, isn't it?
Absolutely. It frames those hard times not just as obstacles, but as potential catalysts, things you have to go through to get to the innovation.
It feels like a universal message, too. The text implies anyone chasing something big is going to hit rough patches, periods of really hard work.
For sure. There are very few overnight successes, despite how it sometimes looks. This story reminds us it's often not a straight line.
Inspiration hits from weird angles, setbacks happen.
Exactly. They're often just detours, not dead ends.
So wrapping up this deep dive then, it's just so clear how this seemingly tiny encounter during a really tough time sparks something globally recognized.
It really drives home how important it is to stay observant, stay open, even when things feel impossible. Inspiration can hide in the most unlikely corners.
It really makes you think about your own life, doesn't it? Those little moments, odd interactions, things you barely noticed.
Yeah, could they hold some untapped potential? What seemingly insignificant details might be the seeds of something important for you?
It's a great question. Maybe the biggest ideas don't always come from grand plans or perfect settings. Maybe they come from the quiet corners, the unexpected companions. What are your garage moments, and what might they be trying to tell you?
Every topic's got a taste, so like, share, and subscribe now. Your next plate's coming soon.